During the 1950s, the National Football League had grown to rival Major League Baseball as one of the most popular pro sports leagues in the U.S. One franchise that did not share this newfound success of the league was the Chicago Cardinals, owned by the Bidwell family, whose team had become overshadowed by the more popular Chicago Bears. The Bidwells hoped to move their franchise, preferably to St. Louis, but could not come to terms with the league, which demanded money before it would approve the move. Needing cash, the Bidwells began entertaining offers from would-be investors, and one of the men who approached the Bidwells was Lamar Hunt, son and heir of millionaire oilman H.L. Hunt. Hunt offered to buy the Cardinals and move them to Dallas, where he had grown up. However, the negotiations came to nothing since the Bidwells insisted on retaining a controlling interest in the franchise and were unwilling to move their team to a city where a previous NFL franchise had failed in 1952. While Hunt negotiated with the Bidwells, similar offers were made by Bud Adams and Bob Howsam. Another potential investor was Max Winter, who, with his business partner Bill Boyer, agreed to start a team in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the new American Football League looked to have its first 4 teams. AFL owners were approached with promises of new NFL franchises or ownership stakes in existing ones. Only the party from Minneapolis St. Paul accepted, and with the addition of Ole Hogsrud and Bernie Ritter, the Minnesota group joined the NFL in 1961 as the Minnesota Vikings. In an article on August 6, 1960 in the Minneapolis Tribune, it was reported the team would use the name Minnesota instead of Minneapolis St. Paul. The article also stated several nicknames were suggested for the team, including Chippewas, Miners, and Voyagers. The team was officially named the Minnesota Vikings September 27, 1960. The name's partly meant to reflect Minnesota's place as a center of Scandinavian American culture. From the start, the Vikings embraced an energetic marketing program that produced a first-year season ticket sales of nearly 26,000 and an average home attendance of 34,500, around 85% of the 40,800-seat capacity at Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington. Eventually, the stadium's capacity was increased to 47,900. On January 18 of 61, the Vikings named Norm Van Brocklin as the head coach after Winnipeg Blue Bombers head coach Bud Grant turned down the job. The Vikings won their first regular season game, defeating the Chicago Bears 37-13 on the opening day of 1961. Rookie Fran Tarkenton replaced starting quarterback George Shaw to throw 4 touchdown passes and run for another to lead the upset. The expansion team lost its next 7 games on its way to an inaugural 3-11 record. Jim Finks was named Vikings GM in 1964, and that season the Vikings had the franchise's first winning record, despite one of the most famous mistakes in NFL history, when defensive lineman Jim Marshall picked up a fumble and ran it the wrong way in a game against San Francisco. 3 seasons later, Van Brocklin quit, and the Vikings again reached out to Bud Grant, who became head coach for 1967. The Vikings then traded their talented quarterback Tarkenton to the Giants for a slew of draft picks and used those, plus some other crafty transactions, to build one of the most recognized defenses in NFL history, known as the Purple People Eaters. In 1968, that stingy defense earned the Vikings their first Central Division title and their first playoff berth. They'd lose to Baltimore 24-14 in the Western Conference Championship game. Then in 1969, the Vikings garnered the best record in the NFL, capped with the first championship by a modern expansion NFL team, defeating the Cleveland Browns 27-7. Minnesota, favored by 12 points in Vegas to beat the AFL Kansas City Chiefs, would quiet the naysayers of the upstart league by losing 23-7. The Purple would go on again to lose Super Bowls 8, 9, and 11 before even closing out the 70s, and 35 years after their last appearance, they remain one of only 12 NFL teams to yet win a Super Bowl. As a young lad of not quite 13 years, I still remember the year after Hall of Fame coach Bud Grant's retirement. It turned out to be one of the worst seasons of Vikings history, as upstart former Marine Colonel Les Steckel's military-like approach to player training led to a 3-13 1984 campaign. After Bud Grant came back for a season in '85, longtime assistant Jerry Burns took the helm, and in the 1987 players' strike shortened with 3 games played by replacements season, the Vikings snuck into the wild card, first beating the Saints and then shocking the 49ers. That set the stage for another conference title shot in D.C. against the team known then as the Redskins. The Vikings would bring legendary coach Gibbs to his knees as they tried to tie the score and send the game to overtime. And this is the curse part one right there. Even more craziness, just a couple of years later, as the Vikings general manager Mike Lynn made one of the biggest trades in sports history by giving a struggling Dallas team 8 overall draft picks, 5 of them conditional on cutting traded players like Darren Nelson and Jesse Solomon. That resulted in players like Emmett Smith and Darren Woodson that become the dynasty of the mid-90s for then-star running back Herschel Walker. After a 148 yards on 18 carries performance in his first game with Minnesota, he only garnered an additional 529 yards in his next 10 games and lasted only 2 additional seasons and 1,600 yards before becoming a free agent signee at age 30 with the Eagles. In 1992, the Vikings hired the only coach in team history never to suffer an under 500 record in a season, Dennis Green. Under Green, the Vikings would make the playoffs 8 times, including a 15-1 campaign in 1998 that began in the June amateur draft that year. Coach Green and Randy Moss looked back on that day.
So the phone rang. Hey, Randy, it's Coach Green.
I said, Randy, I don't think you're going to get drafted before us. And I want you to know that if you're there on the 21st pick, we're going to take you.
Next thing you know, on the bottom of that ticker said, with the 21st pick, the Minnesota Vikings select.
Wide receiver from Marshall University, Randy Moss.
Man, I told Coach Green, I said, man, thank you. I will not disappoint you. I'm going to give you everything I got.
Capitalizing on talent is something that's really important.
In that magical season, the Vikings cruised to a 1999 NFC Championship game against the Atlanta Falcons and were able to take a likely insurmountable 10-point lead with just over 2 minutes left to play.
That'll bring on Anderson. And Anderson hasn't missed in 2 years.
So that's a pretty good bet. If you say, do you think Gary Anderson will make this field goal? The answer should probably be yes.
39 yards away. And it's not good.
Needless to say, my Purple Heart started its devastating bleed out at that time, and after Minnesota led the Rams by a field goal at halftime of the 2000 divisional match only to allow 21 straight third-quarter points in the eventual loss, I decided to jump off this sinking ship and boarded another one, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who would win Super Bowl 37 and then eventually would rebuild and get Tom Brady and win Super Bowl 55. And that remains my team today. So maybe since I left the Vikings, they'd at least get back, right? No. They did draft a great running back who was the NFL MVP in 2012 after rigged campaigns, not only his rookie year 2007, but with Brett Favre helping the 2009 team get to the doorstep of another possible Super Bowl appearance when this happened.
Brett Favre goes back to pass. He pumps. Now he fires over the middle. Intercepted. I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. It was intercepted by Tracy Porter near side to the 40, and John Sullivan runs him down at the 47-yard line. You've got to be kidding me. I can't believe what I just saw.
Looking at that play, he should have just held on to it, Paul. He should have. He could have easily gotten 5 or 6 yards if he would have just pulled that thing down and dove forward.
But why do you even ponder passing? I mean, you can take a knee and try a 56-yard field goal. This is not Detroit, man. This is the Super Bowl.
I mean, the hits just kept on coming in the years up to now. The Blair Walsh miss in the 2015 playoffs, the 2018 conference championship thrashing in Philly. You know, it's time to go back virtually, try to draft a team and mold them, play them to finally, at long last, win one of the most cursed franchises in sports, the most coveted prize in North America, a Super Bowl championship.